Hey, everybody, welcome back. And as you know, I always talk about books and authors, and we've had this is the third conversation this week we've had about books. This particular book and this particular author really is near and dear to my heart because of the subject matter. So I wanted to introduce you to Gloria Warren. Gloria, welcome to LinkedIn and welcome to my corner of LinkedIn.
Hello, everyone.
So Gloria is the author of Kylie and Kyle siblings living in foster care. This book is really a phenomenal book for two reasons. Number one, the reason that I have is because of the subject matter. We very rarely talk about foster care in this country, and it is essential to the way that this country exists. Um, when it comes to children and protection and the way the system in every state is set up. So that's one. Two, it's because Miss Gloria has really put her entire world into making sure this book is available and that the book is utilized actually hands on by foster care agencies, by the court system, by the parents who are foster care parents, and also by the children living in foster care. But before we get into all that, Miss Gloria, I have to apologize to you publicly because your Kickstarter is not starting. And as you said, Martin, I need the Kickstarter to start October 1st. And you're like, it's going to start. I said, yes, yes. And what happened is Kickstarter has the ability to choose to immediately start a Kickstarter or put it into review. And when you put it into review, it takes 2 to 3 business days for them to get back to you. So unfortunately, that's what happened. But I will be letting the audience know and also our group and everybody that's going to support the exact date, hopefully by tomorrow, of when Kickstarter will be starting. And as I always say, that I think that one of the things about life is that it's one, you have to admit your mistakes, and then two, you also have to be a student of life. And so Miss Gloria said to me, you know, it would be good if we started this on Monday. And I was like, oh, I don't have to worry about that. We'll do it Friday. And I should have listened to Miss Gloria. So,
Well, it's all well.
yes. And I think I'm a strong believer in everything happens for a reason. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that Miss Gloria is able to do is to come over to LinkedIn and talk about why she wrote the book, but also what my background in this space is I was a family advocate in the New York City family court system, and what we called ourselves a parent advocates really, because there was nobody really advocating for the family in the court. So the child has a lawyer, you have a public defender for the person that's being facing charges or anything that's happening in family court, but as a parent I was part of something called the Child Welfare Organizing Project. And this is early 2099-ish. And at that time, the family court in New York was over. The most delays were up to a year for most cases to be heard. So what happened is you would be in the court system, your child may go into care, and you don't see a judge on that case until maybe a year later. And by that time, the Family Safety Act that Hillary Clinton passed, that De Blasio, the mayor, the former mayor of New York, also worked on, was that if your child stayed in care in the family court system, they could go up for adoption after 2 years. So people were scrambling to try to get their case heard or just make a deal. And those deals weren't great for the majority of people in New York at that time that was in foster care were Black. It was 92% Black, and the rest were Hispanic. There was like 1% or less than 1% that were white. So volunteering to do the parent advocacy and to sit there in family court and listen to these cases is something. When I saw you and I saw your book, I was like, that really touched my heart, because there's nothing like that available back then. There was nobody saying, well, how does a child transition from family living in a family situation to now in foster care and then transition back, or whatever the case is going to be. And I also ran across a group of kids young people rather, who are now out of foster care, but they're still dealing with the effects. And so there's a big group of them, about 14,000 on Facebook. And one of the things they talk about again is that there was never communication between leaving home and now in this situation and then coming back, or what are they going to do and how it affects them as adults. So when I saw this book and I saw the title, I was like, wow, I really don't know of many books that deal with this. So why did you write the book?
So basically, since my background is in law enforcement, I worked as a police officer and a CPS case manager with Division of Family Children Services. And what I would realize is, as an officer, I would often be sent out to physical sexual abuse cases or cases where the caregiver was on some type of drug, preferably meth or something like that. And the case manager would be like, oh, I need help with getting into the home because the parent was non-compliant. Then later on, I noticed when I became a actual CPS case manager for Division of Family Children Services, I would often have to take in kids and deprive them because they are vulnerable children. They cannot care for themselves. And I noticed that a lot of the times the caregiver was actually causing the abuse. But I wanted to know, the process as far as once they got into the system, and also going to court and being placed in foster care, how these children actually felt. Because you're being taken from an environment that you're familiar with, even if it was not the healthiest environment. But you're now being placed with a stranger. This is an unfamiliar environment. You're anxious, you're going to start acting out, different type of behaviors are going to occur. But also the foster parent has to know something about your background. What has prompted you to act out like this? You've been taken from your environment. So when they do act out, usually foster parents aren't capable sometimes of dealing with those behaviors, and then they want to push them to another home. And that prompted me to writing about it. And also with doing contract work, I would have to, when I left Division of Family Children Services, I started doing independent contracting, where I would actually help foster parents who couldn't deal with certain behaviors. And I would come in and actually work with these children with behavior problems. They might have had ADHD, they might have had emotional, oppositional, defiant behaviors, things of that nature. And so, I'm like, okay, you're wanting to get rid of this child, but you don't understand the complexities that are coming with these children when you get them. It's not about just getting a child in your home to receive compensation for having them. You've got to deal with the trauma that they had as a child. That's what you're getting when you get a foster child. And I also wanted to make sure that case managers were aware of this as well. Because a lot of times the case managers, when they see that the parent isn't doing what they're supposed to do, and they automatically want to take the child into custody instead of finding, maybe a family member that could take this child into custody and the children are familiar with. Now, I understand, of course, you got to do the background checks on them, but I also want to make sure that these children are still safe, secured, and nurtured. And a lot of times you won't get that, and you'll find a lot of cases, even though we've got a place to put this child in, are they being safe and are they being nurtured there? Because it does the kid no difference to be in your care when you're going to get that same treatment that you got when you were with your actual caregiver. It's got to be something nurturing.
Got it. And that's really important. I think one of the things to success in general, but specifically around books, is finding a topic that there really isn't anybody covering, which today it seems like it's hard to do that, or they're not covering it from the angle which you covering it from. I want you to give the audience a little bit of your background, because you do speak very, authoritatively on the topic. And so a lot of times people don't understand, where a social worker comes from, or someone that protects us and puts her life on the line, publicly every day, like you did as a police officer. So give us a little bit of your background. You started taking care of people. I think you're a caretaker and a caregiver rather. Um, More than a caretaker, you're a caregiver. You started caring for people who are vulnerable at a very early age. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Of course, I attended Morris Brown College, and my background, I have a bachelor's in therapeutic recreation. And when I first was doing my internship, it was actually at Georgia Regional Hospital, where I worked with persons that had schizophrenia, they were bipolar. I also worked on their adolescent unit. And even right after that, I actually worked with adults who had been left and abandoned by their parents because they could not care for it. It was a place called Brook Run in Georgia. Uh, and then after that, I ended up working like Chris Holmes, companies like that, where I worked with juveniles that, you know, they had been charged with sexual abuse crimes, and I would work with them. So I've always, had a passion with working in the human services field. So from law enforcement to the medical field as a mental health consultant, also as a behavior specialist. I've even driven the school buses for special needs kids. I've been a nursing assistant, uh, and of course, author now. But all of those things, it's just been a passion. Is I just like seeing people do well and become
Mhm,
self-sufficient,
mhm,
making their lives better. And that's what it's all about. You're helping people to become better people. And when we're dealing with children, um, we want to cut down on some of the crime that's occurring when they have behavior issues, when they feel like they've been abandoned, or they have anxiety issues and they don't feel love. And this is why they're acting out. And you see the turnover in the school system where they're dropping out because they feel like nobody actually cares about them, and they're kind of like tossed around. And I think that this would be beneficial for the kids and the foster parents as well.
I also think that, and shout out to Sister Flo. Thank you, Sister Flo, for watching us, and also Sister Jenkins. Um, I think that something your book does that I haven't really heard people talk about is speaks to try to help the foster care parent. So
Right.
it's, you know, I don't know even what to say. It's a it's a lot when you're dealing with children in care. That's one. But when you decide to bring them into your home, um, that takes a lot. And there's some, horrific stories that I know of personally that, whether the child was born addicted or the child
Mhm.
unfortunately contracted HIV,
Right.
or, so sometimes you're a caseworker, you're a social worker, you're a mom, you're a dad, and then sometimes you're, a hospice nurse. And
Mhm.
so those people, the individuals on this planet that decide to do that, this is a very, very special person to me. And there hasn't been, that I've noticed, very few resources for those folks. And
Mhm.
I almost, every time I hear or meet a foster care parent, I'm like, I just got to ask you, what led you to do that? What opened you up, that type of thing. Um, but I haven't, until your book, I really think about who's supporting them, and I'm pretty sure there's probably by now Facebook groups and stuff like that. But I just don't publicly see very, many resources that help parents who decide to become foster care parents, help them to navigate that space, especially in communication with the child or children, because you don't, want to break up siblings. So I thought that was another interesting spin on your book, or that you just this topic, because that is something that happens all the time. Siblings are broken up, and people always say, I at least I used to always hear, "Oh, we want to keep them together," and then so
Mhm.
you would go, "Okay, cool." You feel like, "Oh yeah, yeah, let's go." And then you get to the court, or you get to the situation, and they're immediately talking about separating them. I'm like, wait, hold on. You said, did you want to keep them together? I thought, so the foster care parent help, and two, the sibling. What made you think of those two topics or those two things and focus on them, especially in the title?
Okay, so I became a foster parent at once in my life. Now, I don't have kids, but I've always worked with kids. Like I said, in adolescence, mental health, like places like Laurel Heights, Hillside, different facilities. So what I decided, okay, these kids were, they kept feeling like they were abandoned, like their parents just dropped them off, or they couldn't deal with them. So when I decided to become a foster parent, the first thing the agency wanted me to get was 4 kids. And I was like, 4 kids? I was used to actually just working with them for like 8 hours a day, not actually bringing them bringing them home. So, and then I was like, okay, well, I'll take one boy, I figured that would be a little easier to deal with, a little boy. And she was like, well, Gloria, he's got a sister. And I was like, I didn't want to separate them. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take both of them. So I took both of them in, not knowing all of the history, because a lot of times foster parents don't get all of the history. And this was through a different agency. So I did know that the mom was schizophrenia. The dad, she had been in domestic violence relationship somewhere in Florida. The dad had just gotten out of jail. So he didn't really have a lot of communication with the family. And the young man, he did not want to have any contact with his father. So I started realizing, he would always often like to go in his sister's room at nighttime. And this probably was because they probably, slept in the bed with the mom. So, that connection. But of course, being my background, I've got to also make sure that nothing's going on.
Everything is on the up and up.
Exactly.
Right there. And let me just ask this. So what I got from your answer right now was that the agency asked you to take 4 kids. You said, no, I'll take 2.
Right.
You didn't really have a circle or anybody to walk that through, right? You didn't have anybody that you just went in your gut and said, okay, well, right. I really was expecting 1, but I'm going to take 2. Okay, fine.
Right, exactly. And I did not
want to. How often do you think that happens to foster care parents, where they try to push more children than the parent may be able to handle?
Oh, I think it's because you're trying to get a placement. And Division of Family Children Services and other agencies, they want to place this child as fast as they can. But we want to make sure that you're placing them in the right hands, because just because you pass a background check and you've got a home, that doesn't mean that you're a great fit for this kid, because they don't see the character of you. This is just you looking at the outside makeup. You have to know the character of that foster parent. Are they going to, talk down to this child? Are they going to make this kid feel worse? So it's a lot of different things as well.
The second thing that you just said that made me stop you and to think about it was that when she told you he has a sister, I immediately thought about the book title, and I was like, okay, I get it now. And so the sibling connection that foster, children living in foster care may have, how often do you think that that's broken?
Quite often. I think because one child maybe have their behavior problems. So you end up, I've had cases where I've gone to pick up 2 kids, and the foster parent will be like, well, this kid, he's doing this. He's no longer going to be with me. I've already contacted the case manager. He's acting out, or she's acting out. And so they break them up still. So you're finding, okay, one child might be on this side of town. Then you got another kid 2 hours away, and you're trying to get them still to bond as siblings. But now you've broken them up because their behaviors. But if the case manager would let you know about these behaviors up front. And they may not know everything, how, about this kid or whatever, but to set them up, most of the time you'll find that a lot of older people are having a lot of foster care kids as well, and some of them, they don't match. If you're 65, 70 and you've got a kid that's 10 or 11 and they have behavior problems and they're starting to act out, that's not the right fit for it. And and they're older, and kids wanting to do activities and you not want to do activities at your age. I would get a lot of times where I would have to go into the homes because they'd be like, Miss Gloria, because I worked as a behavior specialist. They was like, this child is out of control. I don't know what to do with them. And I would have to go transport or take them out to the library, take them to do activities to
get them outside. Yeah,
exactly. And that's what they need. They got to be structured and go outside and do activities.
Right. Yeah. But I think that's the reason why I asked those questions. Is that I think there's another book in you, and that's the journey of having maybe fostering successfully. Building a good relationship in foster or something. I don't know. There's something around that helps the parents and helps the agencies or advocates speak to each other and think the process through. I think it's a very unique process, and it's a lot of factors that magically work together sometimes, and then a lot of times don't work together, but it still feels very arbitrary, like very murky and not solid. Like the adoption process, right? The adoption, you do this, you do that. The foster care, it's still kind of I feel like it's still early 1900s. We haven't really adapted to where we are today.
Right.
So yeah. But jumping ahead a little bit, I'm excited for your Kickstarter and when we started Kickstarter, because you have these rewards built into the Kickstarter. And the rewards that I'm excited about is one, buying a book and giving a book away. But then two, these agencies or organizations that you're going to donate the books to. Can you tell us a little bit about those agencies or organizations you're working with?
Yes, there's a agency, BEAR, and also the Georgia Baptist Children's Home. There are a couple of more as well. But these agencies have served foster care kids for over 150 years. They have various locations, and they're committed to making sure these children are safe and loved and, of course, nurtured. So that was the reason why I chose those agencies. And Georgia Baptist, I've actually dropped off kids there when I was working in the mental health field. So the transitioning process and having them taken there, which was a positive transition for the kids. So that is the reason why I chose those agencies. And I think 2 more agencies will later be getting them on board as well and donating those books to them to help those kids out. Because I just think it's beneficial. You're going in a new place and you're anxious and you're nervous and you feel like you've been abandoned. And sometimes, your parent may not get it together. Like I talked about with me being a foster parent, the case manager told me that, Miss Gloria, you're probably going to have these kids until they're 18. Now, you can imagine telling a foster parent that these kids were 8 and 12, that you're going to have
7 years from now.
Yeah. And my thing was to help the parent get better. Once the parent got better, they would return back to it. But sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah, family reunification. That's what we talk about a lot.
Right.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for writing this. Thank you for putting such care into the topic. It's a tough topic to talk about. I don't see a lot of people talking about foster care, but it happens every single day, every single hour. And those of us that have either worked with the family court system or been in that space, we know it's tough. It is a tough, and it's tough. It's a tough field to be in, and yet it's so necessary. because the way the system is designed, if you fall through the cracks in the United States,
Mm,
there's no space for you to have your children.
right.
Nobody wants the death of a child on their
Right.
watch, so to speak. So the goal always is the safety of the child,
Right.
but that doesn't necessarily take away, shouldn't necessarily take away the parents' rights.
Right.
And so there's a tight walk that we've been walking in this country that we haven't discussed publicly. I don't see anybody discussing because nobody has a real quick, nice, and neat solution.
Right.
So I like that this topic, this one piece of the pie, so to speak, of transitioning from home to foster care. How can that be done? How can that be done as a sibling? And that gives us at least a talking point in one part of the puzzle, so to speak. So I'm excited for the Kickstarter. I'm excited for working with you on getting the books into the community. And then three rather, there are several programs where, like in Philadelphia, we have a program for kids who are aging out of foster care.
Mm-hmm.
And those young people are given the opportunity to work and to find mentors and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I've been working with an organization in Philadelphia on that space, and we haven't had any kind of conversation with the young people who are 18, 21, 22
Right.
about.
Is it the independent living?
It's Temple University, and so they actually can earn a scholarship to get a degree, associates, I believe it is. And but no, it's not assist. It is to some degree, but it's not officially. It's not official. But it is really on the job side and the skill side to make sure they have the ability to get a good job or to get a good degree that in the field of their choice.
Right.
But as with all these programs, the new mayor comes in tomorrow, the budget's cut, and the program disappear. So I'm always looking for resources like yours that can help this young person on their own navigate their internal feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them want to be foster care parents, and I'm like, wow, because I personally, if I had been through the system, I might not want to, but I understand and I love the fact that some of them want to be foster care parents. Right. And here's the thing. I don't know if you, in New York, I don't know if it's probably not the same way in Georgia, but in New York, one of the challenges I had was that if the child was in foster, as an adult, had ever been in foster care, and they were foster parents or they had a child, they were immediately suspect. Like the system really, this is going back to early 2000s, so I believe some of the language and some of the attitudes has changed because CPS is now co-run with the community. So it's a little bit differently, hopefully a lot differently. But I would be in the courtroom and I'm like, why are you introducing their childhood history of them being in foster care? This has nothing to do with the case in front of it. It's just so I kept seeing that over and over and over again. So anyway, my point in saying all that was to say having a tool for kids, young people who come out of foster care and they want to be foster parents, here's a great tool. And it's by somebody who actually has been has been a care giver, who's also been a social worker, behavioral therapist, and somebody who's been a police officer. So it's like, well, now it's almost a guarantee, you can't say no to this content. So I'm excited for that.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I think it's a wonderful thing to share with all the people because you can you really can make a difference in a child's life, whether they fail or succeed in life, and you want them to have those types of tools growing up, and even when they venture out and becoming very successful adults. And that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, they may not have gotten everything from their parent, but if we got a foster parent in there and we got other staff and everybody working together, it benefits the child in the long run.
Absolutely. So we're going to keep everybody stay tuned and in touch. And then in our group on LinkedIn, I want everybody to know who Sister Gloria is. I want y'all to welcome her, what we do with Black LinkedIn is Thriving and how we make sure that we support each other. I'm looking forward to that. And over there, Facebook, hey, Facebook, appreciate y'all. Urban Literary Review, we're going to be interviewing a lot more authors in the next coming weeks because this holiday season is coming. And so I want you guys to remember Gloria's book as a book to add to your buy list because, giving a book is giving a gift that keeps on giving. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks a lot for tuning in.
All right. Thank you.